Hello and welcome to lesson 4 of module 2. This is our first video in this lesson, and you see we have a word problem here on the screen. Toby runs 7 miles in 5 days. He runs the same number of miles each day. How many miles does Toby run each day? So read, draw, write is our model. So we're going to focus on reading. He runs 7 miles over the course of 5 days. He runs the same number of miles each day. So how many miles does he run each day? Okay, and I hope you're seeing this clue word, each. All right. Well, we actually have some examples of how some people made tape diagrams. So let's look at those example tape diagrams and see what we learned from that. Okay, so we have two example tape diagrams. We have Leo and we have Tara. So check them out. See what you think there. What do you notice? They both use tape diagrams. They have different answers. Leo said Toby runs 1 2/5 miles each day. 7 divided by 5 is 7/5. Tara said 5 divided by 7 is 5/7. Toby runs 5/7 miles every day, each day. How did Leo set up his tape diagram? He has a total of 7. Let's go back and look at the problem really quick. Toby runs 7 miles in 5 days. Okay, always good to go back and look again, right? 7 miles broken into 5 parts, 5 days. Okay. How did Tara set up hers? She has a 5 on top, and her tape diagram is broken into 7. So the 5 would represent the days, and the 7 would represent the miles. Which student is correct, and how do you know? You're right if you're saying that Leo is correct, because he divided the miles by the days. She divided the days by the miles. That doesn't really make sense, right? And let's also look at the answers. If we're getting a total of 7 miles and we have 5 days, then it has to be more than 1 each day, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be 5. So it has to be a little bit more than 5, like 2/5. This would be less than 1 times 7. So even if this rounded up to 1, 1 times 7 is 7, but here we have a 5. Okay, so we need to be really careful when we're reading the word problems. We have to be able to identify which quantity represents the dividend, what is being divided up. The miles are being divided up by the days, right? Not the days divided up by the miles. And the which one is the divisor, what is doing the dividing. So 7 days divided by 7 miles divided by 5 days. All right, today we're going to be using models to represent and solve word problems involving division and fractions. And this is the last lesson in this section. After this, we'll be moving on to a new section. All right, so let's look at your book, page 31, and see if I can get that to come up. Here we go. Okay, in your book on page 31, it says, Mrs. Chan uses 13 yards of fabric to make 4 identical quilts. How many yards of fabric does Mrs. Chan use for each quilt? So, first thing we need to do, underline and circle. Pay attention, reading carefully, because we're using our read, draw, write process. So, she has 13 yards of fabric, and she makes 4 identical quilts, so they're all the same size. How many yards of fabric does she use for each quilt? So now we think, what can we draw? After we do quite a few of these, we start to get a pattern, right? So we always want to mark our question and then think about what we can draw. This total is the 13 yards of fabric that she's going to divide into the 4 quilts, right? Think about all this fabric that she bought at the fabric store, and she's breaking it into 4 quilts. So we're going to break it into 4 quilts ourselves. 1, 2, 3, 4. It does not have to be perfect. 3 lines makes 4 sections, and this total amount is 13 yards of fabric. And we have 4 identical quilts. And the question is, how many yards of fabric does she use for each quilt? So 1 quilt, right? It's all going to be the same. Okay. And what could be our division problem here? 13 divided by 4. Now let's just stop and think about estimation, right? 13 isn't divisible by 4. There isn't a 4 times something that equals 13, but there's something close by, and that would be 12, right? If you look at your 4 times tables, you see that 4 times 3 is 12, and 3 times 12 divided by 4 is 3. So we're going to think between 3 and 4. It's going to be a little bit more than 3. And so 13 divided by 4 is a fraction, which is 13 fourths. Now, I don't know, but we can't just go and say, oh, we need 13 fourths of fabric. We need to change that because the number on top is too big. It's an improper fraction. So let's do a vertical division form. And we've already talked a lot about these numbers. So we know that 4 times 3 is going to give us 12. 13 minus 12 is 1. So our answer is 3 yards. And what fraction? 1 divided by 4. 1 divided by 4. 1/4. Why are we dividing by 4? Because we're dividing by 4. That's what we're doing. We're dividing by 4. So we're going to take our remainder. We have 1 yard of fabric left. We're going to take that and break it into 4 parts. So each one of these would be 3 1/4 yard of fabric, right? Now we just need to write our sentence. She uses 3 1/4 yard for each. All right, make sure that is written down on page 31. These are your notes for lesson 4. Okay, and if you don't have that written down, pause the video right now and get it on there. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much. Mahalo.